Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, senior Lakers insider and lead Lakers content creator for Offside. And yeah, they got their asses kicked again. That's about it, right? Like, I got to talk for a little bit longer here. And I guess there's going to be more to say over the course of the show. But once again, the Lakers played a team with a playoff makeup and got their asses kicked. Like, they have like a minus 17, I think, point differential on the season. And as much as we would have liked to trick ourselves into believing that, yeah, maybe, just maybe, the point differential thing was it's fine. They were just working out the kinks. At least they're really good in the clutch, when in reality was they were barely beating mediocre teams during a lighter part of the schedule. Now they get to a tougher part of the schedule, and it's been a string of ass kickings. So we'll talk about that. We will talk. I haven't even updated the anything, the background, the anything. Just I'm just so annoyed. I'm so sick of this team and these people who run this team. Like, let's just get into it. A quick reminder, please hit me, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, hit that like button, all the nice buttons. They go a long ways in building out this show. If you guys are listening to the show in the morning via podcast, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And yeah, we'll go ahead and dive in. So I made this point in yesterday's episode about all-star votes and how the fan base is kind of sort of out on this team. And it was really kind of interesting because in the second half of that game, the Lakers got fucking obliterated and they quit. They quit. And normally, when a team so evidently quits, fans let them know, especially Lakers fans let them know. And there was no booing. It was just like, yeah, we've seen this movie before. Rose doesn't let Jack on that door. And so I was thinking, over, because I had somebody angry at me in the comments in yesterday's episode, asking me like why I was so negative after the Lakers had just won the night before. And it's like, they beat the fucking Kings, man. Like, well done. Pat on your back. Good job, everybody. You beat the Kings. You see what the Clippers did to the Kings tonight, too? Meanwhile, the Clippers, by the way, won 5 straight. The Lakers were their get right game. Awesome. But I was thinking about like the point that I was making as it pertains to the All-Star voting, and there being fewer Lakers votes, I think, in total than you would normally see from a team with this record that the Lakers have. And I was thinking back, like, not only do I think is it that it's a reflection of a fan base that kind of sort of knows this team is going to get boat raced in the postseason, but I also think that there's some apathy that sets in when there is so clearly an inept person at the top of the organization in terms of basketball decisions. Rob Pelinka sucks at this. He is not good at this. Shouts to Nico Harrison for giving Rob Luka. But like, How is it that the Lakers are playing in this game against a Detroit Pistons team that, yes, I think too many people are like overrating the Knicks and underrating the Pistons. But anyway, it is a pretty a good Pistons team. But still, for the Lakers to be less, like so much less athletic than the Pistons are, and then also not very good at shooting, like that's insane. That's really hard to pull off because and this isn't the only game that's the case. Like the Lakers just aren't very physically imposing. They're a soft team. They are not very fast. They don't have the foot speed to go around you or anything like that. You have guys who should be able to bludgeon defenses and LeBron and Luka, but they don't really like playing from the post. So, like, even those guys' physicality isn't really used. Rui is kind of a popcorn muscle type of guy, right? Looks super imposing, but grabs almost as many rebounds as you and I do during the course of those games. DeAndre Ayton, not a super physically imposing guy, not very athletic either. And yet the Lakers also don't really they are incapable of overwhelming you from three. That just doesn't happen. And I was watching this game and it was the kind of game that, like, if you're good at live betting or if you're capable of live betting, I would have absolutely hammered whatever number on the Pistons I could have gotten in the second half because the Pistons were getting past the Lakers and getting into the paint at will. And it was just wreaking havoc on the Lakers defense. There was just nothing that the Lakers could do against them. I'm looking at I want to find the stat on it. 74 points that the Detroit Pistons scored in the paint tonight. And what was basically happening was, basically every Detroit Piston looked at every single Laker standing in front of them, even including Marcus Smart for that matter. He was in foul trouble because he was just couldn't stay in front of people either. Um, and all of those Pistons basically looked across at them and like, "Your barbecue chicken. There is nothing on God's green earth that you could possibly do to stay in front of me." Maybe even illegally. You could have gotten, the Captain America super serum injected into the Lakers at halftime, and I still don't think that would have been enough to shorten that athleticism gap. And so the Pistons basically like got into the paint whenever they wanted to, and were able to, wreak that havoc that I talked about as far as on the Lakers defense. And then the Lakers basically needed all of the free throws that the referees were giving them, or they were trying to hit all of these super hard jumpers. And basically, like when a team gets into the paint and scores in the paint as frequently as the Pistons do, you essentially basically have to try to play the math game and overwhelm them with 3-point shooting. The Lakers can't do that. They don't have the shooters to do that. So what it eventually became was just like a straight up ass kicking because the Lakers just didn't have anybody with the tool set to deal with what the Pistons provided them in terms of the challenges that the Pistons provided them. And you look at the numbers here, and the Lakers shot 11 of 39 from 3-point range. That's 28%. The Pistons they shot 46% from 3-point range, 11 of 24 from 3-point range. Duncan Robinson wasn't even one of their better shooters on the night. He went 1 of 4. And so when you are getting scored on in the paint and you're shooting, it requires you 15 extra 3-pointers to make the same number of threes that your opposing team makes. Like your only hope is to get to the free throw line. The Lakers did get there. Now the in the second half, the free throws really kind of subsided. And even when they got there, they only shot 68% on those free throws. It had the makings of an ass kicking early on that the Lakers were basically holding on to, right? You're holding on to the tiger's tail. And eventually the tiger turned around and was like, wait, why am I running in circles? Come here. and and that's how that game went. Eventually the Pistons basically said, like, get on over here, come accept your beating. And the Lakers walked on over there, accepted their beating, and Luka and LeBron especially just kind of like wilted and retreated into the Los Angeles night. And I've been talking about the leadership problems on this team over the last week or so. I've been talking about this culture that the Lakers, like, they are now known as the team in the NBA, especially like among the teams with good records. The Lakers are now known as the team that you poke them in in their chest, you poke them hard enough in their chest, and they just, ow, stop it, and then they just like walk away, and the game is over. And as soon as the Lakers feel like they can't win this one, they just go, all right, we'll get the next bad team that we get in here and we'll beat the shit out of them. But man, yeah, not beating that team. And it's a bad culture that the Lakers have developed over the years now. And I think that poor culture, that culture of comfort and overall apathy, that starts at the top. That starts with Jeannie Buss not pushing herself to employ better people, but instead pushing herself to employ as many of her friends as possible so that everybody gets along. And then you go from that to Rob Pelinka, who failed, frankly, in the back half of the LeBron AD era to surround those guys with even somewhat serious rosters. And the one time that they did, they got to the Western Conference Finals and they're like, all right, job done, everybody. Good job. We'll move on. And it's just it's just an entire organization that is made up of a whole bunch of people who are way too comfortable in their jobs. JJ Redick, for that matter, too, right? Like, he just got an extension coming off of an ass kicking in the first round of last year's playoffs. Like, who in the like the high ranking people in the Lakers, um, you know, ever operate as if their jobs are on the line? Ever. It just that's not a thing with this Lakers team. And I know there's a lot of people who are really looking forward to Mark Walter taking over. And look, if I'm Mark Walter, I'm watching this game. I'm watching all of the blowout losses so far this year. I am looking at an arena tonight that was filled with Lakers fans who were like, yeah, we knew how this was going to go. Come on, let's go beat traffic. And eventually, hopefully, Mark Walter kind of looks around at everybody. He's like, this is how you're living? and starts getting rid of people. Says to Jeannie, all right, Rob had his chance. Congrats for getting Luka. Congrats on a championship that he apparently drunkenly stumbled into 5 or whatever years ago. That happened then. Let's bring in some actual basketball people who have a semblance of a basketball ideology aside from maintaining their employment. Let's get rid of these losers here. Let's get some people in here who are actually going to fight, scratch, and claw and set a culture of fighting, scratching, and clawing. Like, it's the excuse brigade. The first thing that James Worthy said after the game today is, well, Austin this and Austin that. It's like, what? You see what the Boston Celtics are doing without Jason Tatum? You see what they're doing? That Boston Celtics team that beat the shit out of the Lakers. Like, and that's your rival. That's your arch rival. They beat the brakes off of you, and it was completely predictable that they did. And as much as you want to say, look, well, Lakers didn't have this guy, second night of a back-to-back, this and that and that. I don't care. The Celtics don't appear to care. Joe Mazzulla is a fucking psychopath. And if anybody doesn't play hard on every single possession, guess what? Out. Meanwhile, if you have a jumper and you don't play hard, JJ Redick's just like, what the hell, Vando? Why didn't you make him play hard? The whole thing's broken, man. Put it in rice. Let's start this shit over. All right. Let's see. I do want to talk about Luka and LeBron specifically. I thought for some portions of the game they did this interesting thing where they kind of took turns posting up with one of them one pass away. And LeBron hit at least one three that I can think of off of this type of setup. And then, if the Pistons kind of pre-rotated, it would sometimes lead to a swing kind of opportunity. Um, but I think because as much as we would like to see the Lakers run a pick and roll with LeBron and Luca, I just don't think the Lakers believe in that. I don't think that the Lakers see that as a viable option. So instead, they're going to basically rely on post touches from both of those guys, with one of them a pass or two passes away, forcing the defense into some type of trap situation and going about their offense that way. And I think that is a good pitch to be able to throw. But I do think eventually, like if you have LeBron and you have Luca and you can't find a way to get a pick and roll be operable with those two guys, then it's time to have a real like honest conversation with LeBron about like, hey man, and maybe you just do that at the end of this year. But um it's just you look at all of those guys on that Pistons team tonight, they all compound each other's strengths. Cade Cunningham is a freaking monster, man, and you have a whole bunch of people on that team, especially with Tobias Harris. He exited the game early, and then Karis LeVert wasn't able to play at all. So you just had basically like all of Detroit's young guys out there, and they were hungry, and they fought, and they scratched, and they clawed, and they all kind of like everybody's chest pumps up a little bit when one of the other guys makes a play, and it's just this boulder that starts rolling, and there was just nothing that the Lakers could do about it in the second half. And you look at the Lakers and it's just like this assortment of parts. Like every dad has this basically, but over the years of building cribs and mounting TVs and you know, uh, like building all kinds of stuff around the house, eventually you have like basically a junk drawer in your toolbox of like assorted pieces that you think like, all right, maybe one day it'll be good to have this extra nut and bolt combination, or washer and whatever screw type of situation. It like one day you'll use that stuff. And I just feel like that's been the Lakers roster for the last, I don't know, since the 2000. I wouldn't even say the 2019 2020 season, because I do think the following year the team was built with some direction. um, I do think they kind of whiffed on the Schroeder move. I didn't really like that, but overall, like you could kind of see the identity there. They did start to like they moved away from but when you turn Danny Green into Dennis Schroeder, and when you turn Dwight Howard into Montrezl Harrell, you started, that was the erosion of the physicality, the bigger, stronger, faster identity into this amalgamation of guys who can get you a bucket. And basically what the Lakers roster has been either from the 2019-2020 season or from the 2020 and 2021 season. Um, from that point on, it's just been this, and especially after the Russell Westbrook trade, where they've just basically been trying to dig themselves out of that hole ever since. But it's this collection of dudes whose mostly, for the most part, their best skill is is scoring, or assisting people in scoring. And that's basically where you arrive here. Is the Lakers are basically an entire roster of a junk drawer that, pieces and tools that you'll probably never ever actually use or know good team would probably ever actually use in a very serious way. Back to LeBron and Luka. The leadership thing is a problem, man. Like, JJ's reluctant to coach Luka. He's reluctant to coach LeBron. Luka and LeBron, there isn't very much like conversation with either of those guys over the course of the game. If there's ever kind of a problem with, like, somebody misses a rotation, and if like LeBron notices that it was Luka who missed the rotation, he doesn't really say anything to Luka. And if Luka notices that it was LeBron who missed the rotation, he doesn't really say anything to LeBron. And like, remember how connected LeBron and AD were? Like, remember that dynamic where it was constant communication with those guys. And people are going to say, like, well, those guys were best friends. I'm sorry, man. Like, you look at the best two players on every roster throughout the league, especially good teams around the league. Jamal Murray, Jokic, those guys are always talking to each other, always coaching each other. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and J-Dub, or, like, go on through the entirety of the league. And the two best players and especially at the very top of the league, the two best players, for one thing, they're willing to be coached and their coach is willing to coach them. And then secondly, they are in constant communication with each other. And when you're, guys 3 through 15 or 3 through 14 in the Lakers case, and you look at the top of the roster and those guys just don't really interact very much, these occasional high five and slap on the butt and stuff like that is just kind of customary for basketball or whatever. But there isn't the pilot, co-pilot, or double co-pilots even. Like, there just isn't the leadership at the very top of the roster, or the level of communication at the very top of the roster that the Lakers desperately need. And I just think, it's this kind of rudderless. Like, I think they have plenty of engines, they have an engine, a backup engine, and a sail even to help get them moving and getting into any kind of motion. But there isn't any real direction with, a lot of their efforts. And I just think, that rudder that comes from the culture that your stars and your coach and your GM and your owner implement and demand that they stay connected through it. Like, the first tweet there, a tweet that I saw pop up while I've been talking here, is Spectrum tweeting out video of JJ Redick after the game, and he said, quote, "Building an identity is difficult." Yeah, for it's impossible going about it the way that the Lakers are going about it. It's impossible to build an identity or to build a culture that is devoid of leadership at the top of your roster in the NBA. That is an impossible task. It is not possible to go about building the culture that the Lakers are trying to build without 150% buy-in from LeBron and from Luka. And, frankly, I think that's this team's fatal flaw. And until it's addressed or fucking even identified, I just don't know what anybody does or what anybody can even hope for. Eat Arby's. All right. My final note before we get into the Q&A portion of the show, how long are we going to do this? And by this, I mean, like, I've talked all macro stuff. And look, Rob isn't going to get fired tonight. Obviously, Mark Walter isn't going to, like, storm into Jeannie's office and be like, all right, y'all had your try. Go away. I will say this on that front. I will offer you guys a little shimmer of maybe a glimmer of hope. Might be irresponsible on my part to do so, but I will offer you guys a little glimmer of hope here. Mark Walter gave a quote a little while back about what he would change in his approach to running the Dodgers or being the Dodgers primary owner. And he said something kind of interesting where he basically kind of made it sound like he regretted how long it took for him to really imprint his vision on the team. And I'll tell it to you guys again. Mark Walter buys the Lakers, Mark Walter buys the Dodgers from the McCourts. Um, quick history lesson on them: the McCourts were literally embezzling funds from the Dodgers, and they sold the Dodgers to Mark Walter and his entire group. And at the time, the Dodgers employed Ned Colletti as their general manager, and they employed Don Mattingly as their manager. And basically, Mark Walter gave them the grace to figure things out, show them how they were working. And, a few years later, basically said like, all right, that's all right. That's been nice. Let's try this. And he went out, and in baseball, obviously there's no salary cap. But like what Mark Walter's vision essentially was bringing Andrew Friedman, who ran the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, a tiny market that was at the time competing with the New York Yankees back when they were actually spending money, and the Boston Red Sox back when they were actually spending money. And the Lake and the Dodgers basically said, hey, let's go get that guy. And if he could basically bring what he was doing to keep that small market on par with the behemoths that were the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees, if Andrew Friedman can come in here and bring small market mentality with big market ammunition, that is an unbeatable organization. That is an unbeatable franchise equation. And that's essentially what has taken place. You have a Dodgers organization that is constantly in motion, constantly flipping guys that they're about to DFA for shots in the dark that they could bring into their organization and develop fully, and then turn those guys into potential relief pitchers that other teams might be interested in as prospects, or who could step into big moments, as we saw over the course of this last playoff run. Like the Dodgers, they are never just sitting still. They are never sitting on their hands. There's always something that they are doing, always some kind of advantage that they are trying to work on. And that is exactly how the Tampa Bay Rays had to operate back when Andrew Friedman was there. It was like, look, we don't have it. We aren't going to be able to afford the giant free agents that the Yankees and the Red Sox can sign. But what can we do? We can be way smarter than they are and hope to just beat them on the margins before our best players get signed by the Yankees, the Red Sox, and so on and so forth. And so like Friedman brought all of that, understanding of professional sports and understanding that. And he brought all of that over to the Dodgers. And then the Dodgers were also like, hey, guess what? Guess what else you're going to be able to do? You want Mookie Betts? You want Freddie Freeman? You want Shohei Ohtani? You want, Glass now? You want all of these guys. Like, you want, not only are we going to hit on all of those prospects and continue to constantly churn through incredible prospects and just squeeze out whatever juice is left in there from any player who is willing to work their asses off in our organization. Not only are you going to be able to do that, but we're also going to be able to allow that to supplement the behemoth signings that the Dodgers have been able to make over the last few years. And what does that lead you to? Was that like 3 World Series in the last 6 years or something crazy, or 5? And And so, you know, the glimmer of hope here for Lakers fans is that Mark Walter, who saw the success that Andrew Friedman had, um, and has obviously probably really enjoyed the last 5 or 6 years of owning the Dodgers, he kind of said, "Yeah, I wish we would have arrived here sooner. I wish that I would have done all of the stuff that we were able to accomplish sooner and arrive here that much more quickly, rather than allow the previous iterations of the organization to stick around for as long as we did." And if that was one of his takeaways from his time as owning the Dodgers, maybe, just maybe, he'll apply that lesson to Jeannie Buss, to Rob Pelinka. They've already gotten rid of Joey and Jesse Buss. And we'll see to what extent they're able to build out the scouting department and supplement, Rob with whatever it is that he might need. But like if you're looking for any kind of comfort blankie to hold on to, that I think is what I would point you in the direction of. All right. Let's dive on into some of your guys' questions and comments. We have a few starred ones, which means we get to play this bad boy.
What the fuck?
Whoops. Happy birthday, Bron. All right. First starred comment comes from Justin Tyndall, who writes 63% field goal percentage, 74 points in the paint, 30 points off of turnovers. Walter podcasters and agents won't win you shit. Oh, Walter, I'm guessing there should have been a comma there. Dear Mark Walter, podcasters and agents won't win you shit. 4 days after an uncomfortable conversations, they quit on you. The uncomfortable conversation thing, like, I'm going to be honest, I've been kind of up and down, and mostly kind of down on JJ Redick as a head coach, especially after the series from last year. But all the huffing and puffing after that game to immediately walk that back because he's afraid to actually coach Luka and he's afraid to actually coach LeBron. Like, I think I'm out. I think I'm out on JJ Redick. I just don't think there's any coming back from walking all of that back to the extent that they did, right? Like the next day you have JJ saying like, well, it wasn't that uncomfortable. Like it was this, and it didn't need to be that uncomfortable. It was, the people who I was talking about understood who I was talking about. And he's like, oh, okay. All right. We see what's going on here. And then like whether he was being funny or being serious or whatever. And this is where DeAndre Ayton kind of shows you why some teams get a little sick of him. Is because like the antics are funny and the act is funny when you're winning, and when you're not, and you say stuff like he did the other day where he was like, what, you guys believe, JJ, that it was going to be that uncomfortable? Hell no, it wasn't that uncomfortable. And it's like, oh, so we shouldn't take your head coach at his word? Okay. All right. And look, like the behaviors, it's like I said in yesterday's show. Now, look, Rui didn't play in this one, so I'm not going to like shit on Rui in a game that he didn't play. But, like Maxi Kleba comes in there and was garbage. And all year, frankly, like the best thing you could say about him was like, oh, he plays good positional team defense. Okay. All right, fine. But the guy who supposedly is, supposed to be able to like space the floor for you a little bit, he's only shot like 15 more threes than I have this year total. And there just isn't very much that he's actually doing out there. And I know like Ayton was in some foul trouble today, and I think they're kind of reluctant to play Hayes. very much more than like, 20 minutes or so. But you waived Christian Coloco, a high motor big, a defensive impact big. You waived him to sign Drew Timmy, who hasn't played for you at all. Um, and you have Maxi Kleba, who is supposedly this like floor spacing guy who is not floor spacing at all. It's just like it's again, it's another example of Rob Pelinka over indexing on offensive skills and JJ Redick ignoring altogether defensive and motor type skills. Like Dan Wojcicki, made this point in a column the other day. It was about like um some teams are just wired to play hard, whereas like the Lakers have to try to play hard. And what that's essentially saying in essence is uh motor is a skill, and the Lakers, like as a roster, is pretty devoid of that skill. And I agree if that's essentially like his premise and the point that he's making. But I don't know. Like I also think that the high motor guys who could be playing and could give you a bit of a spark and could raise your floor by way of just being better defensively. JJ Redick doesn't really care about those types of role players. Um, like Vando got a shot, but I would say as much of a reason that he has stuck in the rotations because he started knocking down that corner three, which he only makes a like 1 or 2 a game, but it shouldn't have taken that. Like Vando should never have been out of the rotation. And Thero being completely out of rotation still is, I think, a mistake, and like Thero should get Maxi Kleber's minutes. You're not you didn't win this one anyway. The Lakers are in a bit of a slide down the hill, not a free fall, but they're in that moment. It happens in every movie where like the main, a character is like sliding down a hill and they're like looking for something to grab, and either they do catch the cliff and they just so manage to hold on, or they slip all the way off. And I kind of feel like we're heading towards that moment where it's like, all right, what's gonna happen here? Is the hero gonna save the day and offer an arm and somehow break all the laws of physics and catch an actual human being in that way? Is that person who's like sliding down the hill gonna be able to stop themselves, or are they just gonna go tumbling off? And I don't know, more losses like this make me think that they're just gonna fall off. They're just the end of the cliff is the end of the movie. Justin also writes, been a regular viewer of your show for years. You and Raj says, what will the defense look like without AD? And we have our answer. Get a real GM that can build around Luka. Yeah. So, like, I think Aaron made this point the other day. And this is a point that we've been making for years. And it's that, like, basically, Rob handed the keys to the defense to AD and basically just kind of focused on the offense, and then no longer has AD and can't figure out who to hand the keys to. um, and what that's kind of led to is this like way over indexed offensive team that can't stop anybody. So yeah, like I don't know. It's a tough look. It's a tough look for Rob. It's a tough look for his bosses. And again, if you want to hold on to that glimmer of hope, maybe, just maybe, Mark Walter kind of looks around and says, like, yeah, this is even worse than Ned Coletti. Let's go ahead and prep for the transition a little sooner than we thought. Justin again writes, and thank you for these, by the way, Justin. Got Ham vibes with Kleba and Hayes on the floor together. The Kleba thing, I don't know. Let me look at the numbers here. He was a -4 in the game in 8 minutes. So, like, he was pretty clear pretty quickly that he didn't have it tonight. So maybe he was yanked. before any real damage was done. But just like, it just the pluses and minuses in this one are going to be kind of tough to glean anything from because that fourth quarter was so ugly. But what I do think JJ Redick has in common with Darvin is an overly dogmatic view on the principles that matter to him. And I know that that is something that you can say about just about any mediocre to bad coach or even slightly above average to bad coach in the NBA. But, you're the Lakers. And are you really going to judge a poor character trait that your head coach exhibits off of, well, everybody else has that problem. A lot of the other guys have the same problem. And, that's not exceptionalism. That's not the exceptionalism that the Lakers kind of market themselves off of. And until the people in charge actually hold themselves to an exceptional standard, we're going to get a mediocre product. That's the math on that is very simple. All right, let's dive into some of the other comments. Just make sure I didn't miss any. I can't wait for the people listening to the podcast, like wondering if the thing is broken because at the beginning of the pod, I was just like, yeah, that was a game. That was definitely one of the games I have watched in my life. All right. Haig writing trade for Matisse Thybulle and Robert Williams III. Well, Thybulle has been out for like 2 months with a wrist hand thing that the Blazers aren't being very clear on. So that makes me a little nervous. And then Robert Williams III, right? He missed some time at the beginning of the year with some stuff. And now he did play really well against the Lakers in one of the games that they played against each other. But the Lakers are always very reticent on guys, to trade, especially for guys who have injury concerns. And I just don't really think that Rob is going to trade for guys with that kind of an injury list. And I don't necessarily blame him for that one, even though if those guys like this is what the Dodgers would do. And maybe this is how this is the standard that we need to hold the Lakers to, starting fairly soon, if not right now. But like what would the Dodgers do? And what the Dodgers would probably do, and we've already started to see it with the Lakers, is they would just invest all the money to bring in the best trainers, the best medical staff, the best medical minds, try to figure out a way to keep this team as healthy as they can possibly be by the time we get to the postseason. And they have done that, right? They got the guy who was once with Dallas, who was once with Team USA, somebody who has the reputation that he has, and I think that was obviously a step in the right direction. I would say more. And what the Dodgers would do is they would buy low on a guy like Thibault, and they would buy low on a guy like Williams, and they would get them. Now, this would normally happen in the offseason, but they would get those guys in, and they would see what's going on with their bodies and do whatever they possibly can to make to turn that trend on its head. And I think that's kind of difficult to do in the middle of a season, but that is something that, if the Lakers had more Dodgers people in play, or excuse me, Mark Walter people in play, that maybe you would have seen some of this happen back in the offseason so that, you would see that med staff be able to work on those guys and we would get more Matisse Thybulle and Robert Williams III. But no matter what it is, like I keep on thinking back to Sadiq Bey. I keep thinking about Andrew Wiggins. I keep thinking about Herb Jones. I keep thinking about any of these high motor guys, Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., every other team finds a way to, employ and actually play one or two of these types of players and the Lakers just can't find a way to do it. And it's been a trend for a while now. Even when they got um Dorian Finney-Smith, right? Like they waited, a whole half of a season so that his price would drop below a first round pick. Well, that's still a whole half of a season, if not more time than Smith could have had in the Lakers organization. So you could have convinced him to stick around in LA rather than basically turning those second round picks into a Dorian Finney-Smith rental, and then you had all the stuff that went on, after he left, or as it became clear that the Lakers weren't going to be able to keep him. You had all that go down. So yeah, yeah, it's all of it is just kind of frustrating, and I'm just I'm sick of recording the same podcast. We have more super comments here. So Lakers Pride writing, watching Maxi shoot makes me even more pissed off about that game winner from years ago. That's a great oh man, that is a great that's a great comment. I will never forget. I was in Vegas, and let me think. Yeah, I was in Vegas for March Madness, and the Lakers were playing the Mavericks. And I had put, like, drunkenly, I had put way more money than I normally bet on the Lakers money line there. Not even to cover, just money line. And like the game was in a spot where I was like, all right, I think I literally started walking up to go and cash my ticket. And as I'm walking up to cash my ticket, I'm walking past these TVs that's showing that game unravel. And then finally it gets to the last possession and I stop walking and I'm watching it play out. I have the ticket in my hand. Maxi is open and I'm like 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 right there and then. It was probably kind of stupid on my part because percentages would say that he wasn't going to make that one, but basketball gods were clear. That was not meant to be, and I ripped that up in the moment. And now he gets to the Lakers, and he's like afraid to shoot. Today, it was even better. There was a play where LeBron got the ball at in a swing type moment, and Maxey is so afraid to shoot 3-pointers, he back cut with like a second left on the shot clock. When what he needed to do is stand there at the 3-point line and be that release valve and shoot the three at the end of the shot clock. But nope, no, he won't even look at the three. He won't even look at the basket when he's at the 3-point line. And he doesn't even have the ball yet. It's wild to watch. I think he has the yips. All right, last question, and I got to get out of here. Justin Tyndall writing, Luka just said we played great basketball for 3 quarters. That's a huge problem. Luka, you don't stop. You didn't get a stop in 3 quarters. Yeah, they played great pretty good offensive basketball, I guess. But I don't know. I thought it was kind of held up by by the free throw line and some shot making. But like, if you looked at the types of shots that the Lakers were shooting and you compared them to the types of shots that the Detroit Pistons were shooting, it just wasn't even particularly close. So I don't know. I think if Luka was given the chance to rewatch this game, it would be pretty clear that nah, but you guys were holding on to the tiger's tail, and eventually the tiger just kind of pulled his tail in and said, "Come on over here. You're my midnight snack." All right. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Fun guest lined up for you guys tomorrow ahead of New Year's Eve. And then Thursday on New Year's Day, we will figure out. I think the Lakers play, right? The Lakers play. They don't play tomorrow. Oh, they don't play Thursday. All right, so they play Friday. So we'll figure out something for tomorrow's show, and then talk to Pete today, and he and I are going to get back to our every other week recordings. That'll start back up on Friday. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying, have a great rest of your evenings. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.